All right, what's up, guys? I'm Ed from Guitar Space, and I'm here with Jordan Withers from Poison Noises Pedals. Man, what's up, Jordan?
I'm great, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Listen, I'm not in New York anymore, man, but we're actually like from a similar neck of the woods because I was in the Berkshires for a few years.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah, I was with Workshop Live, which was a National Guitar Workshop. Their .com that unfortunately never really took off, but that was back in 2004, 2005. Beautiful part of the country. I'm originally from New York, but now I live in the Andes Mountains.
Gotcha.
So I'm avoiding those New York winters. But
Yeah, we've been getting it so weird right here, dude. It's been like maybe 3-4 days ago, it was like 75 degrees, and then like 2 days later, it was like below 40. Like it was crazy. Like it changed so much up here, you know.
I know. I'm watching it because I keep it on my I keep it on the apps and stuff, and then I say, and I have the New York thing. I keep it in still trying to get. I've been here 10 years. I'm still trying to get used to centigrade and Celsius and all that.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
sure.
It's 12. I'm like 12, man. Jesus, wasn't it like 20 something just a little bit ago? And and I talk to friends back home and all that stuff, man. But listen, we're here to talk about pedals, and you have jumped into the boutique pedal scene and turned it on its heel. And correct me if I'm wrong. I understand that you built your first fuzz pedal as like kind of a dare for your college roommate or something like that. Was that
yeah, kind of. So essentially what it was is I used to live with my drummer. Actually, the room that I'm currently in right now used to be his room when we were living together. Now it's my pedal room, as you can see by the many boxes of parts that just showed up today. So that's a good thing, though. It just means I'm busy right now. But he was super into fuzz. I mean, we all go through that phase. I'm still in my phase. I've been in that phase for like 13 years now. But he was going through this thing, just trying to find like the right fuzz pedal that was working for him. And I briefly explained it on JHS when we were on a couple weeks ago. And essentially, what it was, he had this one that he really wanted, and I knew the circuit. I've been working with electronics, like audio electronics, for a good chunk of my life, and but I hadn't really dove headfirst into anything like making anything until this experience that I'm talking about right now, where I explained to him that like the thing that he was like, he was seeking, that he was like willing to pay, like, it was like a $200 tag. I think it was like more than that or something on a fuzz pedal. And I was like, man, we could make that for like $1. Like we could just build that. I could build that for you right now. Like you could have that. It would just take a while for the parts to get here, and I'll make it for you. And then there was kind of this whole like, oh, but it's not the same. It's not that, you know what I mean? Like kind of you go back and forth. And he was like apprehensive, but not really. I feel like maybe he was kind of goading me, to be honest. Like, if he kept telling me like, no, you can't, then eventually I'd be like, oh, watch this. And that's kind of what happened. But it was so silly because like, he was working for me also at the local Guitar Center to me, which is the Guitar Center in Albany. And I was getting my amp repaired. I had this, I still have it. It's in my living room now. I had this AC30 that was just kind of in and out of repair all the time until I just decided to kind of do some jerry rig stuff to it myself. But the point being, I didn't have an amp at home when I built this thing, so I didn't have a way to test it. Like I didn't even think about it. I literally came home from work, a bunch of components, like, like laid out on the table. I put the thing together. I was like, all right. And I like looked around my house. I'm like, I don't have an amplifier here. So I had to go immediately back to work. I'd been gone for like an hour at that point, and it came back. Everyone's like, what are you doing back here? And I've got like this, like this rat's nest of electrical components in my hand. And everyone's like, what is that? I'm like, check this out. And we like, got cables like sticking out of it every which way, like, and plug it in, and it fired right up first try. And everyone was like, what is this? And I was like, all right, maybe there's something here. But it was like, literally, I mean, that particular circuit, nothing we do anymore is that cheap to manufacture, especially at this point. But, back then it literally was $1, it cost $1 to make that sound. And then we started like, I started building them to like little tiny project boxes because there were so few components, and like putting them in people's guitars and stuff, like on a push pull. Like I got a Strat right next to me right now that like you pull it up and it just opens the fuzz wide up like straight into the guitar off a 9-volt battery. And like for a while it was like, maybe that's the way we approach it. Maybe we do some onboard stuff. And then eventually people were just like, yeah, but could you put it in a box? Could you put it in a box? Could you put it in an enclosure? Could you just make it into a pedal so I can have it? And then we just started doing that. And that's kind of how the whole company started. It was just from that one, me spitefully building a fuzz pedal to prove my roommate wrong, which was,
And when did it become a business? When did you realize that, yeah.
So
I mean, you probably realized that you were onto something just making that buzz circuit work.
Yeah. So this happened. This whole story I just told happened around like January maybe of 2020. So like right before the world exploded, and and I was like super into it, and I just started tinkering more and more and more and more, and then the person who was the manager before me running that store before he left to run a different store was Connor, who's one of my two business partners in Poison Noises. I had told him what it was. I'd like sent him some. He had his tech put one in his guitar, and then like he loved it, and he was playing out with it a whole bunch. And then like we said, like the world kind of changed pretty dramatically a few months later, and I just kind of didn't stop. And just kept making stuff and making stuff and making stuff to fill the time, because we all got furloughed. First of all my employees, I had to make sure they were all taken care of with everything, and then store managers were like still on for like another 2-3 weeks or so, and then we were furloughed, and then we were just like, I had all this time on my hands. I'm like, well, I'm just going to keep doing this. And Connor being a lateral position to me at the same time, at the same amount of free time, so we started talking about it a whole bunch, and eventually, I had a couple of circuits worked out that sounded really good. And Connor was like, I think we have something here. If you want to do this, I think we should do this. And I was like, all right. So it effectively cost us like 2 stimulus checks to like start this company, because that's literally just where the money went for us at that point, because we were, we were just home, like we were like, might as well turn this into something. My girlfriend threw a little bit of money at it too. She was like, she saw something happening. And she was one of the first people when I said to her, like, hey, I'm thinking about not going back to Guitar Center and just soldering pedals on the kitchen table. What do you think about that? She was like, yeah, that tracks. That sounds like something you would do. And I was like, all right, cool. As long as it's on brand, like sounds like, sounds like me,
do you have an electrical engineering background?
So, I've been like kind of disassembling and reassembling like computers since like I was a little kid, but not even like really like big soldering stuff, mostly just like kind of snapping stuff together. But in terms of like audio electronics, it's so funny. I was telling the story to my buddy I went to high school with a couple of weeks ago. We were just talking about this, is that we had an electronics class together, and our whole project for that class was to like build a speaker. And like with a preamp, and like so you could like play your iPod through when people still had iPods. And I built it, and it, again, if one of those things just fired up, no problem. You know what I mean? We even like, there was some carpentry to it. We actually built like the box and everything for it. And I had no interest in that class whatsoever when I was in high school. Like I was just so not into it. Everything worked and it was fine. It was cool, but I just like was so uninterested in learning anything about it. And then, but, I was playing out at that point, I was playing a lot of guitar, and like some reason, like it didn't click in my head that those two things were kind of one and the same. Like if you buy a lot of gear, you should probably learn how to fix a lot of gear. And then I went to Manhattan for when I was about 21 to finish up school. I went to the Institute of Audio Research, which was for like audio recording, mixing, mastering, and tracking, that kind of thing. And there was like this one little class that happened like, for, maybe an hour a week or whatever, that was like building electronics. It was, you build like little smoky amps and tiny microphones and stuff like that. And that, for whatever reason, was so, at that point in my life, the exact same kind of class was just like unequivocally interesting to me. You know what I mean? It was just it was so much more my wheelhouse at that point. And, I did like a little bit of work on my guitars, but it wasn't until like I realized, like that story I just told you about the fuzz, it's like it was like one of the things where like, oh, I guess I know more about this than I thought I did. And also, I mean, the information is just everywhere on the internet. Like the community is so welcoming and willing to answer questions. You know, when I first started getting into this, I had dudes like Josh Scott or Brian Wampler or, you know, whoever, just like answering questions, like simple questions. You like a normal person who's like be like a titan of their industry, like wouldn't even consider just like reaching out on Facebook and giving you the answer to such a simple problem, because it's so minute to them. But these people are just so willing to help and so friendly, and it's not competitive, and they just want everyone to succeed. And there's not a lot of other things in the world that I can think of that are like that, you know, and I just gravitated to it immediately. Everyone's been so cool. I got a thing today. It's funny. It's right here. I ordered parts. I mean, as you can see, the boxes and boxes and boxes I have over here, you know, I ordered parts from stompboxparts.com, which is run by John Cusack, who does like Cusack pedals and Mojo hand pedals is his too. You know, it's like, to give you an example of like how friendly really everyone is here. I opened one of these boxes, and on my receipt, there was like a little note here that says, "Saw you on the JHS show. Congrats." Like, you know what I mean? And it's just like so funny, you know, I mean, like, obviously he knows who I am because all the boxes say Poison Noises on it. You know what I mean? But like, you know, this is the guy I buy parts from. And, you know, JHS buys parts from him too. And he like designed boards for like a bunch of really big name people, and clearly a busy guy. And like the fact that like, just because, you know, I kind of know him on Facebook, never met him before in my life, you know what I mean? Like, those people are, again, they're just so everyone's just like rooting for everybody, you know what I mean? Like, it's like such like a cool thing.
Well, you know, that's a good segue, because that's where I saw you on the GHS show, and man, I got to tell you, I watch it regularly, right?
Yeah, me too.
You know, it's you know, it's a fun show, and they've got a great energy and a chemistry that goes on there. But your episode was off the hook. It was just I ended up watching it really late at night. Right. And my wife is like, "You're still watching that guy," you know. It was just such a fun show. Tell us about that experience. How did you get on Josh's radar, and how that changed you? In a sense, it put you on the map.
Oh yeah, I mean, so like when, you know, it was such a weird conglomerate of things that kind of made people start paying attention to us. Is that like, I mean, how many other people made the exact same choices I did to like just start building pedals during the COVID-19 era? There are thousands. Like, it is unbelievable how many people started doing that. So I attribute my success to two decisions that I made that were probably some of the biggest decisions of my life. The first one being, I told the story a little bit on JHS, when me and my roommate, who I was just mentioning earlier, who's not my roommate anymore, but, you know, still a very good friend of mine. We, when he was still living here, and I made, well, eventually became the first, the crook, the first V1 crook. When we made that, we were like, yeah, we have, this is it. This is like the best overdrive ever played. What do we do with it? The first thing we thought to do was, let's look up every celebrity player who plays a pedal like this one. And we went on like a quip board, and like literally him and I just in the living room, you know, probably a few drinks in at this point, but like going through, like, you know, like, oh, I like that guy. Oh, do you remember that album? Yeah, that album. He plays stuff like that. He would really dig that. And then I would just like write a list, and he started finding all their Instagram handles. He just started like looking them all up on stuff, and we just reached out to everybody. Like, we just started reaching out to people and just being like, hey man, you should try this thing. I think you'd really like it. Where can I send it to? And just saying it just like that, and just being like, hey man, you know, really big fan of your stuff. I got a pedal I think you'd appreciate. Give me an address. Like, that was it. Like just short little brief messages like that. And we, in like the first day, like we were getting like messages back from like people, and keep in mind, our Instagram account at this point had like 100 followers or something. We were like a tiny little thing.
It's all friends and family.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. And they still, you know, my grandma probably still thinks I'm like making guitars or something like that. You know, she has no idea. You know what I mean? So like, it's like those kind of people. But people, no one says no to, do you want to try this pedal? And we're in kind of this weird niche where, like, you know, it's, you know, pedals are getting more and more expensive for sure, but it's not like sending someone a guitar. You know what I mean? It's not like, you know, shipping is cheap because they're small. You know, the manufacture time is much faster than it used to be. But like, you know, I used to build a pedal back then, like with just the parts and everything, like used to take me like, you know, 4 hours, you know, not including the dry time for the paint and stuff. And now with stuff that I have coming in, I build a crook in like 30 minutes sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, it depends. But you know, my point being, it's not it wasn't a huge investment to just start sending free pedals to people because they weren't super expensive. You know what I mean? And like, at least not as expensive as like sending another product out that you might be proud of in the music industry. I mean, you're not sending like a free drum kit to somebody. You're not sending, whatever.
Yeah, a guitar, just a
right. Yeah, for sure. And like I said, they're cheap to ship. You know what I mean? It's a tiny little thing. So we started doing that. And no one had anything bad to say about it. At first, I was like, everyone's just, blowing smoke right now. No one here really loves this thing. And then, like, they started showing up on, like, their new records, and they were taking them on tour. And, like, we were getting pictures all the time of, like, oh, I let this dude play it. He wants one. Tell him what it costs. I'll hit you. I'll give you his info. And, like, that kind of stuff started happening. And then I was going after the bands that I loved. But at that time, what I was doing is I just had the JHS show just on repeat. Like it was playing in the background of everything I was doing for the first couple of years of me doing this. Right. So, and then it finally like hit me. I'm like, let me send one to Josh. Josh would dig this, I think. And I got a hold of Joshua Bocanegra. He's the gentleman I was sitting next to on the thing. It's actually his birthday today too. But he's like the guy that like handles the communicating and everything. And I sent one to him. I sent it to him. I was like, can you get this to Josh? He was like, yeah, no problem. And then radio silence. I heard nothing. I'm like, they gotta be busy. And now that I've been there, I know how busy they actually were, because it's I don't want to say it's a madhouse because that implies they're not organized. They're very organized. It is a tight ship there, but it is just controlled chaos. There's so much stuff going on there all the time. So but then I was like, who's playing this a lot is bass players. Like we've gotten Joey Howard from Paramore had one for bass. Matt McJunkins, who's been in like for A Perfect Circle, Eagles of Death Metal, a very good friend of ours now. He uses it on bass. There's a ton of people so I was like, you know what? I bet Addison doesn't get a lot of pedals, and I bet Addison would. What a
great idea!
You know what I mean? And so I just found him on Instagram. I hit him up. He was like, "Hey, dude, here's my email address. Hit me up here." And I hit him up, and he's like, "Are you serious? Like, you just want to send me like a pedal right now?" I was like, "Yeah, man." I'm like, I watched the show like basically religiously at this point. You know what I mean? And like, I was playing a lot of bass back then too, a lot more than I do now. And I was like, let me just send you this. You tell me what you think about it. And then he played it. He fell in love with it. He put it in front of Josh. Josh was like, this needs to be on the best pedals of 2021. This is one of the, coolest things we've seen in a while. And I like was getting messages from them and stuff. And then it showed up on the show. And something happened. I think Addison was like sick on the day that it showed up on the show, and Addison wasn't there. So Josh was just like, this is something Addison really likes, but he's not here, so we can't hear it today. And he put it down on the table. And me and like, all my friends are like, you know what I mean? Like, can't believe that we're not going to get to hear this thing on the JHS show. And then like the comment section just like exploded, like from anyone that knew who we were at that point, which was not a ton of people, but we've been doing it for about a year and a half almost at that point. And they were all just like, you got to play that thing, plug it in right now. You have to do it. And then like literally 30 minutes goes by on the show. It's like one of their old 2-hour lives. And Joshua goes, hey, people are like really mad that you didn't play the Crook. Can you just like plug it in real quick? And then they plugged it in, they played it. And like, at that point we probably got something like 30 to 40 orders, which was like big for us right there, just because it was on the show and people liked the way it sounded. But he didn't like really dig into it. It was just kind of like he had a lot of pedals to go through, right? So then Addison comes back, and for the next like year and a half, he talks about that pedal. He's just like, this is it. This is the bass sound. This is what everybody needs. And like, it becomes this ongoing joke at JHS. And I'm getting like messages from Josh and stuff where he's like, you really have no idea how much they talk about that pedal here on the show. It's insane. He's like, when they're not talking about it on camera, they're talking about it off camera. Like they love that pedal. And then, I developed this kind of relationship with Addison where I was just kind of like, hey, this is new. Try this. Do you like this? Well, and like, I don't think he ever loved anything as much as he loved the Crook, but they were still getting the attention, and Josh was, getting to play stuff. And then, then we realized like, we're sending all this stuff to Addison. He's showing it on Josh's show, and we're not really sending anything to him anymore. So I started sending things to both of them. Right. And then like now these huge boxes of pedals are like showing up on the show and like getting opened with all my stuff on it. And it's just like, it's just kind of, it's becoming a joke at this point, like how, all the stuff that they're getting from me. And, we put out like a lot of pedals. Like, I mean, our current,
you have quite a lineup.
Like 20 or something, 21, 22. I have no idea how many. And there's some that are discontinued. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy that that's a thing, but but it is a lot, you know what I mean? So, but I love sending them stuff, and they'll like give me their opinions on it. Like before I came on the show, I was video chatting with Josh a whole bunch, and he was just like, "I like this one. Tell me about this," and you know, and we'd go through, and you know, even after the show was over, he was telling me what stuff he liked and things he thinks, you know, and improvements, things he thinks I should change, and he's giving me a lot of really good advice that I'm definitely going to take in the future for sure. But
you're getting mentored by one of the industry's best. You know, it's really a wonderful story, and the thing is, the service that he's doing for the community in general is just it's amazing. So you're sending him these boxes of stuff, and how is your business doing at this point? It's probably just like you're kind of surviving.
Yeah, I mean, like we're you know, we're all getting paid now, so that's good. You know, like that's pretty cool. You know, I can still afford to buy fenders and eat food, so that's good. You know, usually it's one or the other. You know, but no, it's good. I mean, like I hate talking about the mess that's behind me, but like these boxes right here, like you really have no idea how many pedals we have planned for this year right now. Like how many new things we have planned. Like even before this whole thing with the Addison crook happened.
Sure.
Like,
let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are a secret still, but we got a lot of. I'll tell you right now, we got a lot of collaborations with some of. I mean, there's like local stores by us we're doing collaborations with. There's you know, there's even, you know, on the down low. I mean, it's not really saying that much, but you know, I've even talked with Josh about doing projects possibly later this year or maybe early next year. We still haven't really hashed anything out, but it's something we've talked about, which would be monumental, obviously. A lot of really cool bands like that we you know, we talk about to pretty great length in a lot of our other content are just like, let's do the pedal, let's put both our names on it, let's sell a bazillion of them, and let's, you know, give our fans, both our fan groups, what they want. You know what I mean? It's a lot of neat stuff like that. But I mean, when's our next one slated for? I'll give you the juicy scoop on it. Let's see. We might have a new pedal out as soon as the 17th of this month, which is like crazy to think about.
Really?
But yeah, I think we're like that close to some. We have all the demo content's kind of already done and stuff, and we've shot the photo.
Oh, my birthday's the 21st. Yeah, just in
mine's
case.
Mine's the 29th too. So.
Oh, you really?
Yeah. Yeah, man. I'll be 30 this year. So I'll tell you right now, I've never felt less 30 than just sitting and playing with guitars all day. I'll tell you that. But
you know, when you work in the field, man, you feel like a kid.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
You know,
I mean, like, let's look, like even just a couple of weeks ago, I was dressed up like the Hamburglar on my favorite YouTube show. You know what I mean? Like it was like, that's not, you know, I was making jokes to my friends. I'm like, my parents probably thought I'd be dressed like this by this age, but probably not for the same reasons. You know what I mean? Like that's probably, I'm like probably on track, but not at the same time.
When you walk into a bank and say, you know, how would you give me money if I was to rob the bank? You know,
I'll be honest with you, they didn't even get that. They were like cool. The people at TSA, that was the one that really like, because I wasn't wearing it at TSA, but I had a bag with like burglar's outfit and big bag of money. And they were like, I can't remember how they phrased it because so many funny things happened while I was at the airport there. But it was something along the lines of like, they said, you know, this would make someone really uncomfortable, you know, like implying that it looked sketchy, like what was going through the machine. And I was like, you think you're uncomfortable? I'm the one who's going to get caught wearing it on camera tomorrow. But I'm talking about the JHS show, but it sounds like I'm going to be caught, you know, robbing a bank. You know?
Sure,
So I'll tell you, that wasn't even the best thing that happened at the airport. On the way back from JHS, Kansas City, it was just funny because I actually ran into Josh at the airport again, like while I was there, like after I just done his show. I saw him at the airport because he was flying out somewhere too.
Well, John, he's a tall dude, isn't he?
Oh, dude, he's 6'6". Like let me put it this way. He was not hard to pick out of a crowd. When I was walking through the airport, I'm like, oh, there's Josh Scott. And it was funny too, because there was the dude was in front of me, in the, like on the conveyor belt part of the, you know, the airport TSA thing. This is the most Kansas City thing in the world, but like the dude had cowboy boots that were like this tall. They were huge, and they got stuck in the machine as they were going through. And I'm like standing there, like Josh is right over there. I got to go say hi. So I go in the other line and go through, and he sees me and he's like, why are you laughing? I'm like, dude, the most Kansas City thing in the world ever just happened to me. I got stuck behind someone whose cowboy boots were too big to go through the machine. But no, he's a big guy. I'll tell you too, because, you know, they had me. it was like such a weird experience. Like when I went there, right? Because like I know what the inside of that room looks like from me watching it endlessly for years and years and years, but I don't know what the inside of the building looks like at all. Like what the actual facility looks like, and they have to like hide me. You know what I mean? Because Addison couldn't know I was there for the whole JHS thing because we surprised him. So they like walk me in there, and then immediately turn me right and like hide me in this room, and it's just me and Belle, who you've seen on the show before, and she's like, "Hey, I'm Belle. How's it going? Blah blah blah." I'm like, I'm like, "I'm great. What do you need me to do? We just set up the computer here." She's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go get like a green curtain and we'll drop it behind you so you can't tell and blah blah and all this other stuff." And like,
that's why they had the outer space kind of UFO.
Yeah. Because I was in the building.
Recognize the room. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's what I said to them too. And like they like hang a green curtain behind me, and then like I set up my computer and it's covering like a tiny square like behind my head, right? And I'm like, oh, I gotta fix this. So like, you know, I'm for perspective, I'm 6'2" and I'm 6'3" in my boots, which I was wearing, you know. So like I'm in there like tacking this giant green sheet like behind me on the ceiling of JHS. I'm like, this is like, but I have to be quiet because if Addison walks by and he hears me or whatever, I mean, I'm downstairs, he's upstairs, but still like, you know, I'm like kind of anxious. I'm like, I hear like power tools and stuff going on over there. I'm like, oh, what if Addison hears the power tools going on and then he knows I'm here, and like a million things are going through my head, and then all of a sudden I hear like a knock on the door, and I'm like, oh my God, is it someone who, because I don't know who knows I'm supposed to be there, who doesn't know. So I don't make any noise. And all of a sudden I hear like Super Mario Brothers and stuff getting knocked on the door. And I'm like, all right, that's definitely someone who knows I'm here. Like that's absolutely somebody who understands that I am hiding in this room. So I go and I open the door, and here comes, you know, lumbering in 6'6" tall Josh Scott, like comes like through the crack in the door, and he comes up, he's like, "Hey man, I just wanted to meet you before the whole thing happened." Like you can't like sneak into a room when you're that tall, you know what I mean? Like you just like cannot. It's like it's not happening. But like he's like sorry if I like scare. I'm like, no, dude, it's cool. So glad to meet you. This is awesome. I have no idea where I'm going when this happens. He goes, well, Belle's gonna walk you from here into the room upstairs, because you have to keep in mind I had literally walked in and just turned right into a room. I had seen nothing of JHS by the time I got there. So he's like, she's going to lead you. I'm like, all right, but like, I know this sounds silly because I feel like I know exactly what the pedal room looks like, but I have no idea how it's laid out because you guys have moving cameras. And so literally me and Josh are like whispering to each other. He's got like a whiteboard on the wall and he's drawing it like a football play, like where I need to like go into this room. This is 15 minutes before we go live, keep in mind too. So like the pressure is on, you know, and like he's drawing, and I'm like, all right, cool. He's like, I got to go up there. It's going to get weird. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll see you in, you know, 20 minutes, whatever. And, you know, then we're doing the whole audio test run. You know, I'm wearing the same headset that I was wearing then, and we're going through, and they're just like, hey, can you hear anything? Can you do this, blah, blah. And dude, I could not hear anything. Like I could barely hear them talking. I couldn't hear any of the instrumentation. I couldn't hear like the intro music. I couldn't hear like anything on my end. And I get a message from Joshua. He goes, just tell them you can hear it. I was like, oh man, I gotta fake this for like the first 10 or 15 minutes. Cause like, this is literally 1 minute before it goes live. I'm just like, all right, go time. Let's see, let's go. Yeah. So, and you'll notice it if you go back and watch it now, knowing this, you see when me and Josh and whoever's speaking are communicating, there's like clearly some kind of a disconnect.
Yeah. There was an awkwardness.
Yeah. In the beginning.
In there. It seemed a little, but now it makes sense
because I literally could not hear them. Like I just could not. Yeah. And that's the first thing that made it awkward. Right. So like now I'm sure, as you can tell, just from the few minutes we sat here talking to each other already, I'm a pretty wordy person. You know what I mean? Like I can go and go and go unless somebody stops me. So like that wasn't a big deal. And I told a lot of the same tidbits I just told right here, you know, less elaborate in a shorter form, but you know, the plan was as soon as they start playing music, I go right upstairs. And I had to like change into my costume and do everything and go up there. And it was like 20 times weirder than I thought it was going to be, because first Belle just comes in. She's like, all right, let's go. And like, you know, so now I'm like, you know, like undressing and putting on a costume in front of this person that I met. Like, you know what I mean? Not like fully undressing, obviously, but like, you know, putting on a burglar costume in front of someone you just met is just weird, no matter what the situation, you know? Yeah. So, and I got it. And I'm like kind of overplaying it, like as I'm walking up. And then I realized that they have to walk me through like, you know, JHS where they build the pedals, like the facility up into the room. And literally no one knows who I am. Like, they didn't tell the crew, like, hey, Jordan from Poison Noises is coming dressed as a burglar coming through this room. Everyone just like turns around and looks at me, and I was like, oh, everyone thinks this is as weird as I think it is right now. Everyone is just looking at me like I'm some crazy guy dressed in costume and not asking any questions. So then I walk into the room, and I'm like standing outside the door waiting for the jam to end, which, like, you know, felt like it took like 100 years at that point while me and Billy were standing there by the door. And then I open it, and another thing you got to keep in mind, it's my first time ever seeing that room in person is when I walk into that room. It's like the world's largest pedal collection. It's something that like has been on my computer screen for like, you know, half a decade at this point, you know, and I'm like, see, it's like, I keep saying it, explaining to people like this, because it's like one thing, like I've met a lot of celebrities and famous musicians and stuff like that in my life just based on work I've done. It's different than like meeting like the voice of Scooby-Doo when you've watched Scooby-Doo's for your, because you go onto the show and it's like meeting Scooby-Doo, you know what I mean? Like these are like the characters that you've been watching. It's not like, you know, it's not like these are the actors who play the people you've been watching before that are just like, you know, like I know their personalities already because I've been watching them for so long, but they don't know me. I mean, Josh and Addison, you know what I mean? But like
you feel like you know them, and you feel like they should know you.
right, for sure, because you watch it so much. But also, like, I mean, dude, it's overwhelming when you walk into that room. There's like 5,000 pedals in there. It's
it's huge.
Of pedals. Yeah.
Because we all know the size of a pedal, and you just see lines of them.
Yeah.
Shelves of them, you know. And
I'll tell you right now.
My wife even said that. She goes, "Is that all pedals?"
Yep.
Because I've got like 20 pedals, and she thinks that's a lot.
Oh, sure, man. I mean, I'll tell you right now, my whole life is literally building pedals. Like, you know, I see, you know, hundreds of them in and out the door all the time. And it's just like, you walk in there and see them all in one place. And it's just like, you know, and so I find I follow the football play that Josh gave me, but also you got to keep in mind, I just like ran through JHS and sprinted up the stairs and and there's like, and then I dropped the big bag of money on Addison and I go sit down. I'm like out of breath, and they're like, "So what's going on?" And I'm like, you know what I mean? Like looking around, like it's crazy. I'm so out of it. And there's like a couple of times where like Josh will actually ask me a question, and he'll be like, "So tell me about this pedal," and I'll be like, "I'm sorry, what?" Like it's because I'm so like taken aback by it's crazy, you know. It's like being sucked into the TV, and you know, not to make these guys out to be like superheroes or anything, but they are literally on my TV screen like for like a couple hours a day, every day.
You know what? Yeah, maybe not in the grand scheme of things, but in this niche, they are the giants.
Right, for sure. And it was, you know, it's also, I mean, you know, if you also just take into context, like they didn't tell me where like a monitor for me to look was going to be. They didn't tell me what, you know, I didn't quite know where my microphone was. I didn't know where the mute button was or anything. It's like, I'm like a lost puppy when I sit down in there, you know what I mean? So luckily I had Joshua to like guide me through all of that while it was happening in real time, which was awesome. But all in all, I think it went great. Every single person has messaged me and been like, this is my favorite episode I've ever seen.
It was, For me, it certainly was. And so much so that, you know, I was like, I'm going to go on Instagram and see if I could find these guys, because there was a lot of little elements that got me to that. You know, the show certainly has an improvised feel to it. You know, and so all this chaos that's kind of going on is exactly the way that you put it. It's like it's organized chaos. It's controlled chaos.
Right.
You know, but that improvisational energy that was part of it, and that you also brought to it, because, you know, sometimes you bring in an outside element into that and the chemistry is just gone. Definitely. You know, it just feels uncomfortable. And you came in and it was like, you know, what was already kind of a buzz just came up another level. And I'm like checking this on, and then I'm hearing the story going, oh my God, this is so cool. And also, and I do want to ask you about this is your branding. The naming of the pedals, the color scheme, the artwork, the names of the knobs. Oh, and by the way, for the folks that are watching, you got to go to the website. What a cool website, because you can actually kind of demo the pedals. And this is the closest experience, because generally it's like you hear somebody, they're playing it, and they're playing it through their rig, and it sounds awesome. And then you get it, and it's kind of underwhelming, and you got to live with it for a while. You got to learn it. And here, you know, you get kind of the experience, because you can actually turn off the backing track and sort of tweak the pedal a little bit and get a little bit more of a personal experience, a more one-on-one experience, rather than just hearing somebody play through it and then them talk about, go, this is great. Well, I agree it's great because you're great and your rig is, a $40,000 rig, and I'm going to put it into my little workflow, and sometimes it's underwhelming.
Definitely.
But So, but your website's slamming, and
well, those demos are all done by my buddy over at Loopy Demos. You can actually find him on Instagram and stuff, the interactive ones. That's like his whole shtick. He's so good, and his him and his partner too. She does like cool art of like vintage pedals and stuff like that. They're such a cool Sketchy Pedals is their name, and go and check both them out on Instagram, especially if you're like a builder too. Yeah. Like, and this goes to anyone who builds pedals or anything. Like, if you market pedals for selling, like, reach out to Loopy Demos, because you can just send them a pedal and negotiate terms and figure it out with them. They do a great job, but that's like their whole thing that they do, and they're excellent people to work with. But they definitely took our website.
Very cool experience.
Yeah.
Because also because you have to listen, you don't understand exactly what some of the terms mean, right. and then and you have a graphic there that guides you through. This is a gain knob. This is your tone knob. This is your clipping switch. Right. So it's like, oh, okay, all my questions are being answered here.
Well, I'll tell you this too, to the, and this is something we've talked about for a while. This is some of the best advice Josh Scott has ever given me personally, is, like, our pedals do have such an identity with the different names for the parameters. And like, it's always kind of a 50-50 split of people who absolutely love it and people who can't stand it. There's very rarely people that are right in the middle, and yeah. We've kind of tossed around the idea of, I'm sure most people noticed, because this was kind of one of the bigger talking points about the Addison Crook, is all the parameters were verbatim. Like, it said volume, gain, clipping. Yeah. They said what they were on it, which is very out of character for us. And, I talked to Josh about it for a long time, and, because when he first set up the pedals, he's like, I feel weird that I have to ask you what these knobs do. He's like, I can turn them and figure it out for sure, but I still just want you to say it. I'm like, yeah, I understand. He's like, and it's not always going to be like that. You're not always going to be able to explain it to people. These are going to be sitting on the shelf in some store, and someone's going to play it, and they're, some people are going to be overwhelmed. And I was like, yeah, I know. It's just, it feels so weird to change it at this point, because we're so deep into it. And he laid it out perfect. He goes, I know why you don't want to change them to the regular names. It's because you feel like you're giving up a piece of your company's identity when you do it. And he goes, no one is ever going to understand that better than me. He goes, I used to have typewriter stamps. If you look at the old JHS, they're V for volume, T for tone, whatever. And he goes, I had that for years, until one day I decided to just put the full word on there, so I didn't have to explain it to people anymore. And my sales tripled immediately. He's like people just needed it. And he goes, that's the difference between an abbreviated parameter and you literally translating it to a different word. He goes, you really need to think about that. So going forward, a lot of these new products we have coming out now do actually have the verbatim names on it. They still have the fun colors. They still have all the cool art that I get to draw for them and everything like that. But it's just like,
do you draw that yourself?
Yeah, I do all the art for him.
Oh,
actually,
man!
Yeah.
Congratulations!
Which is really cool.
It is cool as hell.
Yeah,
are you a movie guy? Are you like a movie fan? Because that's what I kind of got.
If you went into my living room right now, like my girlfriend laughs at me about it, but we have like a 75-inch 4K TV in there right now with like Atmos in the living room and stuff. And like, what do I do on it? I just like watch the same movies on it all day over and over again. But yeah, we're big like oh, what does this movie from 1972 look like in 4K now in 2023? Like, let's go.
Dude, that's what I got off of that, man. I got the and not like the new movie type of thing, but like the you're into like the history of cinema type.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. No, we do a lot of very cool. We do like a lot of stuff where we'll like, all right, for example, like 2 days ago, I just got Apocalypse Now in 4K, and like, how many times have I seen that movie? Probably 100 million times, but it's like, have I seen it in this new format, resolution, whatever? Like, and now I need to know what that is. Otherwise I feel like I haven't watched the movie, so I'll find like my girlfriend, I don't think has seen that movie. I'll call over my buddy Ferns. He'll come over. He's seen it a bunch of times too. And just kind of like get all that experience together. That's like a perfect like weekday night for me. You know what I mean? It's just like doing stuff like that. That's cool. So I could see that your personality is all over.
your brand, your product. It's really kudos to you. And again, I can understand why Josh would give you that advice, because it's a business decision,
right?
And then that makes things that makes it different. But listen, let me ask. There's some questions that I did want to get to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hit me up, man. Sorry. Like I said, I'll just keep talking if you don't stop me. So
no, man, because no, and I'm enjoying this, but I've also got to think of the folks that are watching.
Sure.
What are your top 3 pedals?
Of my own or of other people's pedals?
Yours.
Of mine? Okay. Well, it's like, I almost hate saying it, but like the Crook is like literally my overdrive sound. Like that's like what I think overdrive should sound like. And it just so happens that a lot of people seem to agree with me on that. And so we sell a lot of them, that is, I like lots of headroom, but I like lots of volume and lots of gain. And I like all those things at the same time. And that's kind of what the Crook is meant to do. And it's like, it's silly to think about it, but like, there's so many different clipping options on the current version of the Crook and stuff like that. But for me, it's pretty much just like gain all the way up, tone all the way up, wide open. Like that's how I run that pedal, because that's like my ideal overdrive sound. But I know some people may disagree. Second for me, the Glut Cheeks. It's funny. Me and Josh talked about that one at great lengths, because that's the one that's like a fuzz face tone bender that he showed on the show that like switches between the two.
Yeah.
And it does like a tone bender 1.5 thing, which is like my favorite fuzz. And I think Josh's favorite fuzz too, because we talked about it for a really, really long time about 1.5s. I'm a really big fan of that pedal. We sold a bunch of those from the show also, not just Crooks, And then third one, it's hard to say, man. I mean, honestly, like right now, I'm playing a lot of my pedal, the Skipping Stone, which is like my digital delay. Yeah. Nick actually had that on his drums while we were playing. I think it's the 4th setting on that pedal is like an oil can delay, which is like a delay where the repeats have a chorusing effect on them.
Cool.
And that's something I'm really, really into. I really like modulated delays. Like, they talked a lot about the Remnant on the show, which kind of did like a similar thing, but in a more analog kind of deteriorating, regenerating kind of way.
The Remnant is that's like the tape delay.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. I love that pedal also. It's just that one, truth be told, the reason I usually use the Skipping Stone instead of that one is because I'm usually going after less of the tape thing and more after the oil can thing like I'm talking about. It's, one, the Skipping Stone has a full second of delay because it's digital, whereas in the analog domain with the chip I'm using in the Remnant, it can do about 600 milliseconds, which like most people probably don't need more than 600 milliseconds, but like the weird kind of ambient stuff I'm doing right now, I do. So like that kind of makes a difference. But they're both great. They're both two totally different beasts, though. I'm making them sound like it's one or the other, but they really are two totally different ways to approach a modulated delay sound. But yeah, I guess that if I had to like only have 3 pedals to play, it would probably be Crook, Glut Cheeks, and then Skipping Stone, and then I would just use the reverb on my Fender. That'd be a good rig for me.
Yeah, I actually do that. But I do a hotel gig 2 to 6 times a month, and part of the way to make it exciting is I grab 3 pedals. I'm going to use these 3.
Just like any 3, like without thinking about it.
No, there is some thought about it. That goes by because I do need a compressor. It's just because of the sound system in there, some sort of overdrive and then some sort of preamp pedal, and I just plug straight into the board.
Oh sure.
I think it makes it kind of fun, in that where you're really forced to work the guitar and what you've got, the limitations in there. But, we can talk about that after this. Now, sure. What about your 3 favorite pedals of all time?
Okay. Man, that is tough. Well, I'm going to give... It's so funny because I'm talking more about oil can delays now, but the Old Blood Noise Black Fountain was kind of my inspiration for that setting on the Skipping Stone that I'm talking about right now. Those dudes, and those guys, they make crazy stuff, and that was actually the first pedal that like I ever like opened up and I looked at. I'm like, what chip is that? I should learn about that chip. and then learned how to code that chip so I could start doing digital pedals. Like that was that pedal that like, and now I've got 4 or 5 different pedals that use that same chipset because it was in that one. I liked the way it worked and I needed to learn how it worked. So that's definitely one of them for sure. Man, I don't know. It's so funny because I feel like they're just going to be derivatives, or my pedals are it's going to be what my pedals are derivatives of, right? Because like I sit there and think about it. What's really good? The Red Witch Medusa. I don't have it anymore, but I think about that pedal all the time. It's a really, really good chorus pedal.
Yeah.
I don't think about it too. I don't have it anymore. I think about it often though. We have the Spill as our chorus, and it can kind of do the same thing. But something about that pedal just had mojo.
Yeah.
I feel like I got to pick like a dirt pedal now. It's hard to say because I just use the crook for everything. I really don't use anything else. All right, I'll say this: I didn't play any pedals at JHS while I was there because I had so much to do afterwards in terms of like communicating stuff.
Yeah.
And they like asked me like, "Do you want to sit down and play in this room?" And I've like, "Oh man, I really do," but like you guys seem busy. I seem busy. I know I'm busy. And but if I was gonna play anything from that room, I regret not playing his Tonebender 1.5 that he had in there. He had a Tonebender 1.5, and that, like I said, that's like what the Glut Cheeks does. But he had like a real one. You know what I mean? Like an original one.
Yeah.
And we talked about it and I didn't plug it in, and I'll probably forever regret that. So either that or like I'm really into super fuzzes right now too. I'm into old fuzz right now. So
yeah, you do seem like a fuzz junkie because you've got like a handful of fuzz type pedals.
Yeah, there's more coming too.
In your lineup. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So what guitar sounds inspire you?
What do you mean, like in terms of like albums or artists, or how do you mean?
Yes, yeah, albums or artists.
So right now, I mean, it's so funny because we're talking so much about fuzz, especially with the super fuzz and current stuff I'm working on right now. I've been really into like Brian May, Jimmy Page. That's just all I'm learning right now is Brian May and Jimmy Page. So I was like, for whatever reason, that has just been my whole practicing regimen for like the past 3 weeks, which is funny because that's never been who I was. Like that has just not been. I've been playing like, pop punk and grunge like my whole life. I've been playing like Nirvana and Taking Back Sunday and stuff like that. Like that's pretty much like where I live. And just recently, I don't know, something about the old kind of circuits I've been working with and bending them and trying to make them do the right thing and sound like how they're supposed to sound on records. Like I've really found myself gravitating towards a lot of Zeppelin and a lot of Queen and just being like, I'm going to sit down and learn that whole solo today. And never like in my life have I been like, I want to learn the whole solo by an artist. But for some reason recently, it's just spoken to me. So that's probably what I'm into now. But I'm really into pedals being a texture for singer-songwriter stuff. That's like really what I'm into, like on a broader scale.
Oh, very cool.
I'm really into Manchester Orchestra. They're one of my favorite bands. And then Andy Hall plays a crook now, which is very, very cool. I mean, just looking around the room, I don't know if you can even see from where I am, but I have like t-shirts all over the wall. So that's usually how I try to, when I answer this question, but but I'm really into like Elliott Smith is another favorite artist of mine, and not necessarily for as much his guitar tone, but what he does with the guitar to accompaniment his songwriting, because that's what these things ultimately are to me. And that's where I usually differ from a lot of other people that buy pedals is these are all tools to me. It's like you buy this so you can have this one thing to fix this part in a song. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I have things that are just toys here for sure. Like, there's some stuff that I plug in just to make the weird noise, but ultimately it's like when I'm thinking about it making a pedal, I think about how I could use it to approach adding to a song or writing a song or something. And because in my head, that's what a pedal should do. When you buy a pedal, you take it home and it makes you want to write a new song or write a new riff or something like that. Like that pedal has done its job, and that might even be the only job it does. And maybe it does that and then you sell it because you don't want it for anything else anymore. But like that's what they're supposed to be for me. They're supposed to embellish on your creativity and make you play new things and different things. So like, I'm talking about the fuzzes I'm working on right now that'll be coming sometime out in the near future. They're making me play solos from artists I've known forever, but have never been, I guess, ambitious enough to learn. Like I've never wanted to learn the solo to Bohemian Rhapsody in my life, but I got this one pedal and I played that. And I was like, I'm going to learn that today. You know what I mean? And like that lets me know that I'm onto something with that pedal. So that's kind of the way I approach it.
I know exactly what you mean because actually, we do monthly themes at Guitar Space for the newsletter, and this month is Amp Month, so of course the Marshall news and all that stuff. But I went out on a wire, and so each week I'm going to try to sound like X player.
Oh, cool.
And I'm doing and trying to recreate that with like digital stuff, you know, and see how close I can get with that. And and actually this week is Jimmy Page.
Oh wow, no way. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
I love that.
I was listening to a lot of Zeppelin yesterday for that, but I wanted to ask, especially because you're in it, man. You know, what do you see? How do you see the future of pedals? You know, the boutique market has exploded, and it's beautiful because you can get the sound that you want. Like, you know, if you like this type of circuit, you like that type of sound, but you don't like for example, in my case, I hated the way that tube screamers sounded when I used them. I thought it was a great sound, but when I used them, it didn't sound good. And now to get it with the EQ kind of tweaked a little bit or tamed, or the little idiosyncrasies that you personally didn't like, you know, I used to just say I hate tube screamers. And then I started playing boutique tube screamers and going, these things sound amazing.
I think everyone goes through a phase in their life where they hate tube screamers. I think that's like a thing that just, like happens. I think like I've been going through my I hate tube screamers for over a decade now. You know, we do the knuckle sandwich, which is our version of the tube screamer, which in my head is like I fixed everything I didn't like about it. And I'll tell you what the real reason that I think most people don't like tube screamers is because they don't like their amplifiers. That's usually what it is. And that might not be the case for you. I'm sure I see you have an Egnator back there, so I'm assuming you like your amplifiers. But I think that...
yeah, but I got that's a huge story. I'll do it really brief. I moved down here 10 years ago, and I came down here with a twin, a Mesa Boogie, Egnator, and a Soldano.
Nice.
Right now, all I've got is the Egnator and the Soldano because of the voltage variances that go on in every stage that you go on. It blew. Not only did it like you don't say I don't have any Gibsons on my back wall because they're in the shop, and it blew the pickups on my Les Paul.
Really?
Playing in this. Well, also I'm just south of Medellin.
Okay.
And it's called the City of Eternal Springtime, but it's also the lightning capital of the world.
Lucky you.
So you hear a transformer blow, and then you know my amp is blown. The transformer on that Egnator has been replaced twice. The Soldano has been replaced. I fixed the Boogie, and I fixed the Twin, and I found buyers for them, and then I started going to I went to the dark side, and I went through the multi effects the digital skateboard as just a convenient option.
Yeah.
And now I'm back into the pedal thing, you know.
Well, I think with tube screamers, what a lot of people do wrong with them is they crank the gain up really hot because they think that's how you're going to get that push Stevie Ray Vaughan sound out of it. But I find, you know, what you do is you get an amp, you know, and you can do it with a Fender too, but I prefer to do it with like a Vox or a Marshall or something with a little bit of a dirtier tone to take it, just slam the volume into the front of it and use it to push your amp that way. That's how I get those kind of like old blues rocky tones that people usually like out of the tube screamer. But that's not even how I use my knuckle sandwich. What I do with the knuckle sandwich is I added a bass control to it. I crank the bass up all the way, and then I flip the clipping position so that it uses LED clippers, which is like what's in like a turbo tube screamer. And then it's just it's like right on the border of fuzz and overdrive, and that's pretty much where I like to live all the time. You know what I mean? It's like right between those two things somewhere. But I think, you know, to go back to your question, what do I think like in terms of like what's going on, the future of like the boutique industry and stuff? I think we are at a peak right now of people who are still on, you know, riding the high from all the free time they had from COVID and might even still be making some money. You know what I mean? And people are playing their stuff because, like, ultimately that's what a lot of this is for a lot of people, just the gratification of this cool person thinks I know what a good pedal sounds like and I made it and he paid me money for it. Like, for some people, that's the whole shebang. They don't even care about money. And I'm kind of like that, you know, but it's like I think we're going to start to see fewer and fewer companies in the coming years as the economy is kind of in a tough spot right now over here, and we're going to see that fall down, and then you're going to see prices of pedals go up because there's not going to be as many of them, and parts are going to get more expensive. But I think what we're going to find is that there's going to be a lot more innovation in the future because we went through this whole thing during COVID where everyone just made tube screamers and clowns. You know what I mean? That's just kind of how it goes. And now everyone's going to be like, I got to do something different. I got to make the new thing. And everyone's going to be trying different stuff. And that ultimately, I think, is a great thing. I think that's going to inspire innovation and changes and new technology and new things in pedals. And I think people are going to get a little more ambitious with it. But I think that they're also going to be inspired without, give myself a big header, but people like me and other people who have made a living out of this and will push harder than they ever have before, because my whole life people have been telling me there's no money in music, and I'm on my fourth career now where I've made money doing it. You know what I mean? So it's like there's room for it to happen, and I think it's a great. I really truly do think we are going to see a lot of new and interesting pedals coming out of the woodwork. And like I said, I do think, parts are going to get more expensive. So therefore pedals are going to get more expensive. And then, you're going to have to pay more people for labor because minimum wage is going to go up. And that's a great thing. You want to pay people, you want to make sure people are paid well, but that's also going to make the prices increase. But the thing is, these pedals are going to be worth that. You know what I mean? And that's something like I struggle with in my own head, you look at like what the baseline crook we have right now costs, it's $120. Do we make a huge amount of money off that? No, we really don't. But I really like making that pedal, and I really like sharing it with people. But then you go and you look at something like the Addison crook. The Addison crook was $180. And was that because I was trying to gouge prices during a limited run? No, it's because that's what it should cost to make that pedal. And, Josh, another great piece of advice Josh gave me is I said to him, I go, man, I don't want to sell pedals for $300 a pop so that only rich guys are playing them once a weekend. I want the crappy poor garage rock kids like me to go play them. You know what I mean? Like, that's who I want to be able to afford the pedals. And he goes, so then sell them at the price they should be, which is like, at that time we were talking about the price of the crook. He's like, sell them at the price that they should be, where you can make money so that you can take whatever amount of money you want and use that to give free pedals to the poor garage rock kids. And I was like, oh man, he's right. You know what I mean? He really is. And it's like, it's a way better way of thinking about that. Like, don't undervalue your product, sell it for what it's worth, sell it for what it costs to make, and make sure your company can thrive. And then when you start to benefit and you start to have extra income from that, use that to give it back to the people that remind you of yourself, the people that couldn't pay what the retail value was for that pedal. And that was something that really spoke to me. He's like, the weird pedal uncle I never had that just like has all the advice about the industry. Yeah. You know what I mean? He's full of just, and
he's so giving. Like
yeah,
he's
really
incredibly giving. It's just I think the service that he's doing for the industry is incredible. I mean, I knew very little about pedals. I grabbed them and tweaked them and then play them, and that was it. And then through this job, started learning a little bit more about them. And my pedal education has really come from Josh, Brian Wampler, and the chairman of the boards. I don't know if you're familiar with that podcast, but I love that podcast. I learned from those. Those are my three sources.
Oh yeah.
But here's so we can start wrapping this up. Is what's next for you guys? What do you got on the horizon?
Ooh, a lot of things. I mean, if I was going to do a short, brief thing, I can think of over the next couple of months. I can think of one, two. At least in the next 3 months, I think we'll have at least 2 of just regular line pedals that'll always be available. So not limited run stuff, just like regular new things we have coming out. They're done. They're on the shelf over there. You're not going to be able to see them, but they are. I'll give you the sneak preview after we end this. How about that? But right. I've got those. We've got a really, really cool limited run thing that we've planned for, I think, sometime in June. Another thing to keep in mind is all the crooks in the market are currently gone. There are no V4s left at any retailers.
Really?
We don't have any. None of our dealers do. There's not even any on the secondhand market right now. There's no crooks. There's not. So
wow.
We got to think, is it time for the V5? You know, like that's like, you know, that might be, which, you know, ultimately would be the Addison crook just in the regular enclosure. And I'm going to go out and say that it's time. I think we are there. And I think that's going to happen. So that's coming.
Yeah.
And then there's little stuff too. Like, you know, there's a music festival up by us that happens in Glens Falls. I'm making a limited edition pedal for that festival so that they can raise more money and, you know, doing that. And then
That's
I got,
cool. Yeah.
you know, I got a music shop up by me that wants to do a really cool collab thing. I'm ordering parts for it right after I get off this call, you know, and it's like, yeah, and there's just like, I love these short little projects, you know what I mean, where I can kind of just like make a whole bunch of something and then never think about it again. You know what I mean? And then and that's it, you know.
That brings value to it because it really makes it, you know, it's if you're interested in this, buy this now,
right?
Because there's not going to be a million of these things out there, you know, in the coming months, and then it could be worth hopefully the $8,000 clock, you know.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'll tell you this right now. There's 2 Addison crooks online on Reverb that like clearly people just bought them to flip them, and like that I hate. That just makes me so upset because I get messages all the time now. People who are like, "Man, you ever gonna make more Addison crooks?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, man. They all sold out." And they're like, "Oh, I was one away," and then some dude went and bought like 3 of them, and now he's flipping them on Reverb. You know, like that guy didn't want the pedal. That guy just wants money. He should not have bought the pedal. And honestly, like, you know, I know who those people are. I go up and I look the serial numbers to see what's on Reverb. I'm like, all right, next time he orders something limited run, I'll have to have a conversation with him first. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like how it has to go. And I know stuff like that drives Josh crazy and everyone else in the industry. It's like, we don't make these pedals affordable so that someone else can make the buck on them. We make them because we want people to be able to buy them and play them and experience them and not have to go bankrupt buying them. That's the whole point. You know, and no one is a bigger advocate for that than Josh Scott, that's for sure. And you mentioned Brian Wampler too. He's another one of those dudes who's just always been so cool and supportive, and I'll take any advice that dude gives me too. He's got a podcast too, Chasing Tone. If you don't listen to it, he's awesome. I'm a Patreon subscriber to them. They're great. But yeah, there's an Addison crook on there right now for more than I saw a Bad Monkey on there for right now. So, which
man,
it's unfortunate.
That's got a sting.
Man, you know, but I would rather, part of me wants to just like offer that guy his return back and then just be like, hey man, I'll just give you your money back. You send it back to me. Let me give this to someone who would actually love it. You know what I mean? But it's like, or I could just go put out the V5 and then people could buy them for, you know, for the regular price all over again, which is probably what I'll end up doing. So.
Yeah. Because actually I got to be honest with you. When I went to the site, to your site, your prices are very competitively. They're
low. You can say
it looks. There's a passion there. Yeah. You know, it's accessible to the average player.
Yeah, and like I don't want to obviously discourage anyone who you know has a lower income or anything, but you know, to be totally transparent about it is like, if we want to keep making pedals at the speed that we're making them right now and the quality, like the price increase is happening. They're probably going to be closer to the Addison, you know, crook price is probably what stuff's going to be, but that doesn't mean there's not plenty of stuff on there right now that you can't buy for the price that they've always been, you know. And we just want, you know, I'm not after anybody's wallet here. I really, it's so hard to like explain that like truthfully and have people believe you, but I really do wholeheartedly just want people to play these things. Like I really just want to make, I want to be a part of everyone else's music, you know. That's what gets me excited about this. You know, if I wanted to make a whole bunch of money doing something, I wouldn't be building freaking guitar pedals, you know what I mean? I'd be, you know,
you would you'd be doing something else,
right? You know,
no, I got you. Well, Jordan, I want to thank you again for taking the time. I know you're busy, and especially your business is it's moving in the right direction. And man, I'm glad I got a chance to talk to you. I'm glad I got a chance to know you, and I wish you all the best.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. I love being on you know, podcasts and being interviewed and stuff. I love telling stories, and I've been looking for an excuse to tell the JHS story again. So I'm glad you reached out for sure. But thanks, no, dude, I really do appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time.
All right, man.